Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar on monetization made easy for Godot. My name is Luke Pretty. I'm the head of education at Yoda One, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. So thanks everybody for joining. First, the agenda. Quickly, I'll do a brief overview of Yoda One, then introduce our guest expert for today, and then we'll jump into the session. Our guest expert is Alex. He'll be answering my questions about better monetizing your game, particularly for those using the Godot game engine. Then we're going to bring in another guest, Carlos, who's going to give us a demo and show us actually how to integrate using Godot. We'll talk about what that means later on, so be patient. After that, we'll take live questions, so please write down your questions in the Q&A. If you have serious questions that you want us, the experts, to... I'm not the expert, I'm the host. If you want Alex or Carlos to answer, I don't think there will be any questions for me. You can put those in the Q&A. If you have quick questions, then you can put those in the chat, and someone's in the chat to answer those. All right, a little bit about Yoda One. You may know Yoda One as a game publisher, which is true, but we're mainly a platform company. Yoda One started in 2011, publishing hit games like Crossy Road, Rodeo Stampede, Transformers Earth Wars, Ski Safari, and more. And as we went along, we built internal tools that allowed us to turn those big hit games into huge financial successes as well. One of these tools is an ad optimization platform called Maz. In 2019, we expanded to focus on helping game developers turn their games into businesses, and we'll be spending some time talking about that today. So let's get into it. Our special guest today is Alex Althoff. He's the head of product at Yoda One and an expert of all things data analytics and monetization. Thanks for being here, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Luke, and thanks for the introduction.
Absolutely. Is that adequate as an introduction? Is there anything I need to add to that?
No, not yet. Who knows? Maybe you can tag game developer on there someday. I'm still working on it, but yeah,
right.
Super.
Right. Well, if it suffices, maybe we can start off, Alex, with sort of the big picture. Overall, what are some things, some keys that game developers can use to increase their revenue? This is one of the bigger problems, major pain points for many developers. What are some of those things that they can do to take their revenue to the next level?
Yeah. So the first step is always to pick out what you want to do with your game. And what do I mean by that, Luke? I just mean who is your game for, and how are you going to make it and build it to attract those people. So having that kind of mindset in mind, and knowing that your first idea will be one of many, and you need to experiment and continually test with people. This is step one. Once you've got that down, then you've got to ask yourself what platform you'll be publishing on, right? And so are you going to be a mobile developer? That's certainly what Yoda One believes is the future, the present, and even it has been a growing trend for years now, right? We saw that in 2020. Whether that's that or PC or some console, you need to pick that. And then the third thing is you need to figure out how you're going to grow your revenue. And we strongly believe in free-to-play games that use advertising. So that's why we created a solution specifically for that, to take the guesswork out and to make sure you're maximizing your revenue. Because ultimately, the alternatives, something like having in-app purchases, which people may or may not even want to spend money on, or having your game be paid, those are both carry a lot of inherent risks. But the ads are a fairly straightforward way and have been proven over the last couple of years to be a great way to make more money with your games. So that's what I'd say are the three key steps. And yeah, we're here to talk about that last one, because I think it's the one where a lot of people get hung up.
So you're seeing, I mean, you work with a lot of developers if you were to say, the average balanced game economy is largely supported by ad revenue and then supplemented by in-app purchases and maybe subscriptions or something like that, but the main
Yeah,
meat of it being ads.
that's well, and I think it's important to distinguish, and that's why we're so excited to be talking with the Godot community too, right? Some of these very big developers out there, think Zynga, think Lion Studios, big names who we've all heard and know well. They can afford to have an in-app purchase based game. They can afford to acquire big IP that allows them to build something like that, and then get hordes of fans all over the world to pay into it, and that's great. But most developers who are indie developers, they tend to operate at a slightly smaller scale and need an ad revenue source, or sorry, a revenue source that's going to be, manageable for their target audience. And for them, that's going to be ads, almost 100% of the time. Experimenting with in-app purchases is great, but ads should be the solid foundation, and at that level.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to support a large in-app purchase economy, you need a whole team dedicated specifically to that,
Yes,
refreshing it seasonally and all that stuff. Whereas ads is a lot easier
exactly.
to manage for a smaller team or even one person building games by themselves.
And often you need big IP backing it up as well, right? A lot of what draws players into those bigger games is that familiar face of, say, Marvel or a Disney property. Whereas for us smaller developers, it's our own ideas, what we came up with. That has to start with a different monetization foundation, which is
Yep.
ads. Yeah.
Makes sense. Maybe we can focus specifically on Godot then. Now, I know that many developers on Godot have a harder time with monetizing. So specifically with ads, could you talk a little bit about what are some of the struggles that you see developers on Godot facing when they're trying to monetize with ads effectively?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one of the best things about Godot is also one of the tough things for ad monetization. And that is that Godot is a very active development engine. It gets updated all the time. And developers love that because they get to contribute to that development and prioritize what they want to make it easier for them to build games with Godot. The flip side of that is that the developers who are continually updating Godot are not thinking at all about monetization. They're not thinking about the end goal of building a business off these games. And so there is no official monetization solution for Godot. And as a result, there are some unofficial ad monetization plugins that have been created by the Godot community. But if those aren't actively maintained, which frankly, Luke, they rarely are, it means that the developer who might want to use them at any given moment could find that because of a recent update in the Godot engine, they no longer can. No company to date, other than Yoda One, has made the commitment to the Godot community to keep step with the engine's updates and make sure that our plugin for monetization works with the engine consistently. And I think that's one of the things that distinguishes us and helps solve this pain point. The other thing is that I think a lot of Godot developers, they're relatively new to game development. The beauty of Godot is easy to use, so easy, and I really have enjoyed playing around with it. But the flip side, it means that there is maybe less emphasis on monetization first and more on experimenting. And so if you have to implement something that's complicated technically, it's a real turnoff. If you can make something easy to use, that actually allows you to continue your experimentation without a lot of pressure to figure out, oh, how does this monetization tool fit into what I'm doing with my game today? Yeah.
So some of those the plugins that you're talking about, they no longer work or they break because there's an update. What is it
Exactly.
that Yoda One is doing to make sure that that stays up to date and isn't breaking and is there to support the Godot developer?
Great question. So I think the first thing is that we monitor the releases of Godot and compare our plugin to the engine and make sure that it's still compatible, right? It's just basic maintenance. Um, the second thing is that we did have a period of time where there was an issue with compatibility, and we're very upfront and transparent. We say, this version of Godot works, this version of Godot is not going to work with mass. And we work to figure out how we can overcome that barrier. So I think these are two key points that help us stay on top of it. But at the end of the day, it's just really comes down to a commitment to maintain in the face of change.
So we've kind of talked around Maz. You brought up some of the the issues that there's a great engine for building games that doesn't have the same level of monetization support as maybe other engines. But we've been kind of talking around Maz. I mentioned it earlier. You just mentioned it. Maybe we can just say what it is. Could you talk a little bit about in general what Maz is, how it works, and
Definitely.
why so many devs have been using it?
So let me back up and just shortly talk about the. So we know that in ad monetization on mobile, there's something called an ad network, and an ad network is a single source where developers can put usually an SDK into their game and get ads from that ad network. Classic example would be AdMob. One level above that, you have ad mediation. And what that does is it takes ads from multiple ad networks and chooses which one's going to be the most valuable to show in any given moment. So AdMob also has mediation. IronSource has mediation, and AppLovin has mediation. These are all big names in the mediation space of ad monetization. Mass is one level above that. Mass is an SDK that takes all of the mediations that are popular in the market, the ones I mentioned and others, and it goes between them and picks which mediation is going to be best for this game and how is it going to make sure that it delivers the maximum revenue for that game's users. This is highly impactful because at the same time as it does this, it takes all the work of managing those mediations off the shoulders of a developer. I personally had to go in and work with AdMob mediation the other day, Luke. And I think if I had to do that every day, I'd go crazy. It's very, very complex. And if you think about it, just getting a game out the door can be tough for a lot of people who are just getting started or experimenting, having perhaps never built a game before. So to have a tool that manages monetization at that level, which is what Maz does, is a game changer in a very complicated and fragmented ecosystem of ad monetization.
And I talked to quite a few developers just in my conversations with them, and I hear something very similar. Maybe those who were using another mediator prior to Maz needing to have essentially either full-time dedication to tweaking all the knobs of the mediator to make sure that it's still working properly, or needing to hire like 4 people just to do that. Whereas when they're using Maz alone, it's mediating between mediators, and it's doing all of that with AI. So that's taking all of the burden off. The knobs are being tweaked still, but it's being done by an AI that's trained by a world-class monetization team at Yoda One. So that's what I hear from developers, just like, oh, phew, okay, great, thank you, taking care of that part, and it's still making me more money than I was before.
Exactly. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that AI bit, right? I think that's one of the things that is really important, is that humans have done monetization for the last decade, and I think monetization is a very interesting subject. I appreciate the complexities of it, But I also think that where we can free developers up and empower them to use their time and their resources for what they really got into the industry for, which was making games, not turning knobs on a mediation, and hand that over to a machine, we're doing the right thing for the industry and we're doing the right thing for the developers, because ultimately that role and that task is something that it can be a thing of yesterday, and not everybody can be focused on making great games instead.
And that's, again, what I hear from a lot of the developers I talk to is, wait, I can't believe I was doing that thing before. Like, I can't believe that elevators used to need operators. I can't believe that that was a reality. I can't believe that I used to have to spend 3 hours a day wrangling my mediation platform when I could have just been, building new narratives for my game or something more fun, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think now might be a good time to bring in our guest Godot developer. So I'm going to bring in Carlos Camargo. So thank you very much, Carlos, for agreeing to do this. I appreciate it.
Thank you for the invitation.
I wonder if you could, Carlos, since you're using Maz on Godot, I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience and also maybe take us through the flow. I mean, one question that I think comes up in most people's minds is, okay, that sounds great, but it's probably, a pain to integrate. Maybe the simplest thing to do would be to just go through it and show people how easy it is. What do you think about that?
Sure. I think this is the best way. By the way, my experience was very smooth. I'm coming from Unity, many years developing in Unity. So we have a very easy process in our plugin inside Unity for integrate. When I changed to Godot, the process was very similar. We have the same way exposed settings in the editor. We have a very easy step-by-step guide in our site. So maybe this integration took me for the first time, maybe 20 minutes. And even with more and more experience, I may be taking like 10 minutes, the half.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I'm tempted to say, well, prove it. Can we go through it? Can we just look at the integration process? If it takes 10 minutes, maybe we can spend 10 minutes on that. What do you think?
Sure. Will be great. Let me say just that many times at the first time you need to download some files, and that could be longer because you need to download those files. In my case, I already have in my computer, so this will be more faster.
Great. Okay. So yeah,
Are you ready?
Share your screen if you. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, nice. Let's do it. This is my Godot engine window. I got to import a project for start the integration. As you can see, I have a Unity project folder. I got to open this project. This is a bit imagine game. By the way, this is a very good game. It's have an arcade feel, so I like this game because that, as you can see, even the screen simulate an old CRT panel. So the first step, I got to follow our guide step by step. And the first one is go to download a file. In this case, the file will be the first release. So I got to put it here. I need the release number 101, okay? I got to download this to my computer. And I got to put in the project folder, okay? In this case, I got to save it here. And I got to open this folder because we got to work in this space, okay? The next step is add the Android platform to my project. So in this case, I got to install Android build template. This could take many time to download. In this case, it's in my computer. So right now it's installing. As you can see, right now it's finished. And what happened under the hood? This add the Android folder, right? So the next step is go to the plugins folder and copy our plugin, okay? So if you remember, I already have this. I go to extract right now, and you go to find Android folder and plugins. So I just got to copy and paste into the game directory.
So the first time doing this, because of downloads that you have to maybe do, is maybe a little longer than the other times. But once you've done it, then for future games, if you add 2, 3 games, 4 games, those will be faster the next times.
Yeah, you can download. I'm pretty sure that many Godot developers already did this and have these files in their computers.
Right.
So one very good thing of the plugin is you can update sometimes to the latest version. In this case, when we release the game, the available version was 4.2.1. Some days ago, our team pushed a new update. So I got to change this to 0.2. Okay, and just go to save this file. Okay, the next step is add a script for work with the Godot 1 plugin. If we come here, we have included that file into our package. So I go to copy this file, and I go to copy in the scripts folder of my project. This is not a rule. You can choose the directory that you want. And I go to create a new directory called Godot 1 and copy my file. Okay? Mm-hmm. And also, I got to copy these files for the build, Android manifest, build, and config Gradle files. Okay? So I got to copy into my Android folder and my build folder. Okay? You got to replace, paste, replace. Okay? So overall in the file system, we are ready. What's the next step? We got to take the Godot editor and we got to start to create our plugin objects. In this case, I got to open a new scene from my project because in this scene, I got to create some buttons for test the plugin. Let's search for the menu principal. It's in Spanish because the game is created by a Spanish language developer, but it's like a main menu, okay? So I got to open this scene. You see? Well, I got to create a new node.
I'm learning Spanish and Godot at the same time. This is great.
Good. And as you can see, I already have here my script, Godot 1 mass. Okay, I got to create this one. you got to see at the bottom, and I got to create inside this 2 buttons. So I got to search for button, and this button will be an initialization button. So I got to call init. And I got to put it here. Now I got to create another in this case, I got to put in here. I got to call this interstitial. Okay. So now I got to put the labels in my inspector. So I got to put init in this button, and I got to put interstitial. Okay. Well, we have one step more. We need to configure our account for telling away from Godot 1. So if I click here, I got to get some variables here. My app ID from Android and from iOS provided in our dashboard. So I go to the portal, and I got to open my, I got to copy, my app key and paste here. Okay. After that, we need to add the code for initialization and for interstitial add. So I go to the init button, to the node window, and the press signal. In the press signal, I go to choose my Godot 1 mask and connect. So as you can see, I need to call the function. In this case, I go to call the init function. Okay, it's done. Now, I back to my scene. Oh, sorry. I go back to my scene and go to copy. Oh, this switch my previous scene. Sorry, here. I go to copy to do the same for the interstitial button. So I do the same. We go to the press, choose Godot 1 mask, connect, and I go to call this time show, and you see the auto completion, show interstitial add. It's done. So I go to save the scene, and we go to build. For that, we go to set up our export options. In this case, we need to check on use custom build, check the Godot 1 mask plugin, and we got to set up our package name. In this case, we're using com.mask.godot. And finally, we need to set up.
And you can copy that from the dashboard generally, right? The com. You would copy, that's also
true.
There in your dashboard. Got it. Okay.
Sure, you can find here.
Got it.
Okay. Then we got to set up the permissions. We need access network state, and we need internet. So I got to export the project. Maybe we got to experiment issue. This is because the NDK version. Let's see. This done is not a rule. Sometimes can happen, sometimes not. Okay, it's here. As you can see, we have a no version of NDK match. So I got to copy my available versions. I got to copy this one. and I go to paste into my config Gradle file. Okay? In this case, my config Gradle file, I got to substitute the current version for the available version. Okay? And I go to save. And now we got to export again.
So is that something that almost always happens the first time you do it, or is that a rare issue with the NDK version?
Yeah, I think this is because the Java version is installed and need to find the right. So maybe you got to experiment this every time, but when you got this number and you got to maybe update your project, you don't need to do it again. Okay, cool. So right now the APK file was built. It's here. Do you want to try it?
Yeah, of course, we got to try it. This is the big moment.
I got to drag and drop into my BlueStacks emulator. So it's installing. This take a moment. I got to go full screen and I got to open the game. You got to see a message because this is a debug version. And we have our two buttons.
Nice.
And I need to initialize the game. The SDK, sorry. I go to initialize, maybe this takes some seconds, and now I can test our ads working.
Nice. So that's it. We're done.
That's all. You're ready to monetize.
Pretty straightforward. Just for clarity, I'm not a developer, but I'm closely following what you're doing, and it's very, very straightforward. That's great. Alex, can you score out of 10 on the process? What do you think? You've seen a lot of developers doing this. You're on mute.
You're right. I'd give it a 9.5. I think that NDK thing, though, that's always a tricky part. But unfortunately, with Carlos's help, now developers will know how to get past that. That is fantastic, Carlos. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to share that as well, Carlos, to have a tactile sense of how it works rather than a very theoretical sense.
Right.
I wonder if, Alex, there's anything you'd like to add to that, just to provide context. And also, I'd like to know, I wonder if there's anything coming up that's exciting for the dashboard or using Maz in general.
Yeah. Well, first, I would like to just add the quick context that this is a great game. Thanks, Carlos. I always love checking this game out. So that's also something that it's one of those games you can just keep playing because it really never ends. But I would say that Carlos, if you could stop sharing your screen, maybe we could.
Sure.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I would say that in this situation we have with Godot right now, we're really aiming to push the envelope of what we can do with the community, and that ties in nicely with the mass product generally. So we know that people who make games with Godot are really passionate about the game making process. And one of the things that can be challenging is when you have that passion, how do you take that and translate it into making a business out of that, right? Because it's one thing to make a great game like the one we just saw, and it's another thing to be BitImagine Studio and actually be making money off of those games. So one of the things that's coming up for the product, which Luke, you know very well, is we're looking forward to releasing some new content on our Mass portal to help our developers know better both how to use our product, i.e. the Mass SDK, for whatever engine you're using out there, or how to use the portal in order to make sure you're maximizing your experience with it. However, there's also some other content we're looking into creating right now that will help developers with other areas of the game business. And some of that will be around best practices in the industry for game design. Some of it will be around potentially ASO. I know that's all good stuff that's going to help our developers succeed and all be available right inside the Mass portal. That's something exciting. The other exciting thing is that as we continue to develop and grow our SDK, we're constantly looking for new ad networks to make sure we're maximizing revenue. We know Godot developers often use banners, and right now in the next quarter, we're going to be focusing a lot on how we can continually optimize banner revenue in order to make sure that games make the most that they can. So yeah, that's some cool product updates coming up.
Yeah, that's great. Exciting stuff. It's, I think, big picture, all about helping developers to focus on the stuff that they tend to enjoy doing more, the creative stuff, building stuff,
right,
and have the benefits of a team and doing the business side of it, but have a lot of that taken off of their shoulders. And that's really the big picture advantage. Well, I really appreciate the demo, Carlos, and also Alex, for sharing those insights. And those watching, thank you for being patient. Those of you who have questions in the Q&A, thank you for being patient. Before we get to those, one thing, if you would like to connect with your fellow developers, fellow Godot developers, ask questions about monetization, learn more about Maz so that you can unlock your game's revenue potential, click on the link in the chat to join the WhatsApp group, or you can scan the QR code that you see on the screen as well. Also, there's an exclusive offer for those watching. If you register for Maz before next Friday, we're going to offer you a free ad design recommendation report. That means where you can put ads and how to use, for example, things like banner ads, interstitials, really powerful stuff, in addition to Maz already optimizing your revenue. So quite powerful. Don't miss out on that. Again, you can scan the QR code or click the link in the chat. All right, so now we can get into some questions. Again, if we aren't able to cover all the questions, it's because we want to keep it pretty concise. So feel free to just ask those in the chat, but maybe even better, join the WhatsApp group and connect with someone from Yoda One. We can certainly answer all your questions there. Okay, first one, probably for Alex. Do I need to pay to use Maz for Godot?
No, in fact, you don't. Mass is 100% free to use, and we're very happy to make sure that you have access to that plugin directly in our documentation for one-click download. So absolutely not.
Free, and also another thing I hear from talking with a lot of developers in interviews, very convenient payouts. The way that we do the payouts, you can use any payment method and everything quite straightforward, very simple, very transparent.
Best in class, Luke. Best in class. We offer consistent monthly payments for as little as $50 a month in earnings, and that's the 10th of every month. I don't think there's any other ad monetization tool out there that offers that level of quality and payment. So yeah, very convenient.
That's what I hear.
And our revenue. Yeah.
Godot is great for PC, but for what reason should I enter the mobile gaming industry? Maybe this might be for Carlos. I don't know. Maybe Carlos, you want to take this one?
Sure. The last years, the mobile devices are growing and growing. Every people have a one phone, tablet, and other devices. Even right now, we have Android TV, for example. We can play on the TV the mobile games. So your market will be bigger and bigger every year. People have not just one, two, or three devices. So you can get that market.
And I would add to that, if you look at the trends, if you look at the major AAA studios and you watch what they're doing right now, they understand that where it's at right now. They're all turning their AAA titles into mobile versions. EA is doing it. Everybody is doing it because they see the revenue potential and they see where it's going. But I mean, the charge was led by indie devs, and they're sort of, waking up to it right now.
Yeah, and also you can give a free option. You can give your game for free and monetize using our solution. So it's a complete.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you want to add that, Alex?
I do just a little bit. So I think sometimes PC has this allure that it's easy to build, it's easy to use. And we do know that Godot is great for PC because it's great for low-end devices, which sometimes is really important when you're making a PC game. However, here's the truth. Because it's great for low-end devices on PC or on a desktop, it's also fantastic for mobile. Maybe even better than Unity when it comes to its global reach. Because Unity, for any developer who's ever used it, and when you take a phone like this crappy TCL right here, and you try to put a big, complicated game on it built in Unity, forget it. It's got a hog memory, hog space. Godot is very lightweight and creates very lightweight games that are perfect for mobile. So I say, take the plunge, folks, because mobile is the future, as Carlos and Luke just said, and it's also a perfect platform for an engine as lightweight and flexible as Godot is.
It also sometimes feels like, everyone's already done everything. That's not, I mean, we're still in Wild West times for mobile games. There's very much lots of room for growth.
Definitely.
I think we can do this as the last question. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, ask in the WhatsApp group. What's your company's relationship with the Godot community? You alluded to that, Alex, but maybe you could just take that on as a last question.
Absolutely. So the Godot community is a very big community, and it's all around the world, right? And we're very proud to be connected to that community in multiple countries already, talking with the heads of the Discord channels or the people in those communities who are influencers and movers and shakers. The developers of Godot, we've also reached out to them, and we're in contact and continuously making sure that we're trying to align our priorities with Godot's values. And in fact, I think it's important to note that a tool like Godot is so wonderful because it is more than the people who build it. It's also the people who use it. And we're very committed to those people, since we know that they are the future of the mobile game industry with Godot. And we want to make sure we do everything to support them.
Great. Again, very well said. Thanks, Alex. And also thank you, Carlos, as well, for taking us through that and answering questions.
Yeah.
Much appreciated.
That's awesome, man.
Well, I appreciate your time, both of you, and thank you all for joining as well. Appreciate everyone who joined. I hope you got something out of it. Great questions. If we didn't get to your question, don't worry. We are here for you. You can connect with us by joining the WhatsApp group in the chat, and there you can connect with other devs as well. And as I mentioned, get a free ADR report if you register for Maz by next Friday. So click on the link in the chat or scan the QR code that you see on the screen. Yoda One is all about helping you make more money with your games, and Maz is the best way to do that. We wish you all huge success with your games and hope to see you in the next one. Thanks.